Yo, what is up? How does it do? Thank you again for listening to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, and tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. If you aren't able to do these things, I'm supposed to believe that you are one of the people that live in that Arctic island, McDonald Island, that's getting tariff. So don't buy American goods, those penguins. I really want to start off with some housekeeping notes. First off, I mispronounced the bats on the previous episode. If you guys watched about MLB rather, they are the torpedo bats, not the turbo bats. So my mistake for that. Feels like the same shit, but hey, look, we want to be accurate on this show. You know what I'm saying? So that was my only thing. Is speaking of just like that whole concept is I'm someone who rarely, if at all, reads comments. One of my main takeaways of getting into this space and doing anything is these opinions that you guys hear or listen to, whoever you guys are out there, they're from me. No one else told me these things. No one else kind of slipped these things in my mind. I'm down to have a conversation, which is what this platform is for and what at least I'm trying to use it for. But these things are all made and produced at home here, right? And here and here. So I don't like reading comments, basically, because I do feel like comments will influence a lot of content creators, influencers, people like that, to shift in a way that isn't necessarily what they actually believe or what they actually feel. However, with that situation, I was clearly wrong with it being the torpedo backs, which are apparently helping out the Yankees a lot. Other little notes was that apparently these things were around for a while. This is, my point remained the same about, the bats and everything that happens with the Yankees. And if it happens with the Yankees, it makes it really popular. The analogy I use with the lumber, I didn't really think that it was going to actually hit in like a literal way. Because, buddy, when you start to put tariffs on countries that just have ice and apes and penguins, boy, buddy. But hey, there was just something about that black woman I just couldn't trust, right? Speaking of which, on today's show, we are getting into your boy KD, Kevin Durant. Why are we talking about Kevin Durant? It's not because his team's very good. His team is actually very bad. Right now, it doesn't look like they are going to make the play-in. That obviously can change. There's still about 6 or 7 games left before we get into the NBA playoffs, and we will be talking major NBA playoffs next week on this pod. But for the time being, we're going to talk about Kevin Durant because his team's not going to be in the postseason. He won't be in the postseason. I believe this will be the first time Kevin Durant has played this many games since his rookie year and missed the playoffs. Or maybe it was the first couple seasons, because I know when Harden got there, they made the playoffs every year because Harden's never missed the playoffs. There was a year they missed the playoffs by a game, and that was the year that KD had his foot thing. He missed most of the season. I think he only played 30 some odd games. So this is going to be one of the first times this man has missed the playoffs in more than a decade. And he's played a lot of games. He's qualified for all the major awards, so he's played at least 65 games. Same thing with Devin Booker. And the fact that they've had the Dallas Mavericks physically fall apart and the fact that the Mavericks might get in over them when they've had significant injuries. They were thinking about forfeiting games. They traded away their best player. Then the guy they got back when they traded away their best player missed 6 weeks, and they're still going to miss the playoffs. It kind of is the open secret now that Kevin Durant will be moved. So this is on top of the conversation that was had with Shams Charania on the Pat McAfee show, where Shams basically said that Kevin Durant is out. This has been pretty much an open secret for the last 2 months, ever since it was rumored that he was going to get traded to Golden State. And Shams listed off some teams that were interested in getting Kevin Durant, being the San Antonio Spurs, the New York Knicks, the Miami Heat, and so on and so on. The Houston Rockets as well, was some of the teams that Shams mentioned. I think that KD obviously will be moved. Where he gets moved, I think will be a very interesting kind of point in his career. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be to a team that's got like a young star or a young-ish team that basically can only give back like prospects essentially and picks, even though that's what Phoenix would want. Not actually, let me rephrase that. A smart team would want. They would want draft picks and they would want young players because their team isn't going anywhere. No, Phoenix wants to have a star back or some version of a star back or some version of players right now that can help their team grow because they still have Devin Booker on the team and they basically said they're not going to trade Devin Booker. And I have no idea how the hell they're going to trade Bradley Beal. I don't think it's even possible. I can't think the only trade that I think could work. And I mean, the problem with all this, and this has been the problem with Phoenix all year, is that they can't move Beal unless Beal wants to move. And the only thing I can think about is sending him to Philadelphia because you're basically trading bad contract for bad contract. Now, Paul George and Devin Booker have had static for a long time. So I don't think this is going to be the Paul George Bradley Beal swap. But would Phoenix say, hey, we can get an MVP in here who just won a couple years ago off arthroscopic knee surgery. This is like his 5th surgery. I feel like in almost like 2 years on the same knee. But if it's not something like that where you're getting just another really bad contract and thinking that maybe it'll be better with you versus with that team, I don't see Brad Beal getting moved. But there's 2 things I want to talk about with this idea of Kevin Durant. And it's funny because I remember listening back to his statements, or rather reading back to his statements after he won. I don't remember if this was the first championship or the second championship that he won with Golden State. And I've mentioned this on before, is the fact that he basically said that it didn't fulfill him, right? And it didn't make him happy in large parts. And it also kind of reminded me of something that A.J. Brown, the wide receiver for the Eagles, all-pro guy who's putting together a potential Hall of Fame career. At least he's probably on his way to it, at least if he stays at this pace. He spoke a little bit about a version of this where his team won a Super Bowl in dominant fashion. He had a decent game. I don't think anyone really had a great game, obviously, outside of Jalen Hurts per se, but it was very much more, it felt like a team effort. The team was just so much better than the Chiefs versus that the Eagles had one dominant player versus a player on the Chiefs. And he said a version of, and I'm paraphrasing here, but a version of like winning the championship didn't really satisfy him. And he said that what satisfied him was the idea of essentially making corners, defenders, guys that are covering him, quit mentally, right? That was what he was more into, dominating the game, really putting his imprint on the game. Now, you can look at that as one of 2 ways. Obviously, as a wide receiver, most people think of that just going to be selfish. And to some degree, it is selfish, where your team just won the championship, and the only thing you seem to care about is the fact that you weren't able to, quote unquote, dominate receivers. But the flip side of this is that there is a level of individual greatness that I think everyone is trying to achieve, whether it be in life, whether it be at work. People on listening to this, people on apps, you're part of teams all the time, but you'd be lying to yourself if you wouldn't say that you would want some individual acclaim or, recognition. Like, that's the whole reason we have awards and, celebrations, and like people use that stuff to push for monetary gain. Like, that's a real feeling. And I feel that's kind of the same way with Durant after what he said with his statements. It's, quarter goal, which we already talked about in this pod, I think was one of the most illuminating times in my life with Kevin Durant, because I got to learn a little bit about him in just a normal sense of like, this guy just loves playing and he loves competing. And I don't think that any of his stops, whether it be Golden State, Brooklyn, and now Phoenix, gave him any sort of real happiness. And I think a lot of times we, outside of sports athletes, can put narratives on guys in the sense that, okay, you're doing this to win. And at the end of the day, all these guys let me not say all, a large percentage of these guys want to win, right? Winning is the ultimate goal. But for KD, I think he wants to win in a sense where he also has a level of comfort and achievement in what actually took place. You know, I don't necessarily think Kevin Durant's the kind of guy who's willing to just average, I don't know, 10 points a game and just be a spacer. You know, he's a guy who's gonna want the ball in his hands because he's Kevin Durant. But I've always questioned, like, where exactly is this happiness for you? Because you've done everything. You know, you've won an MVP. You've reached the NBA Finals. You've won the NBA Finals. You've been a Finals MVP 2 times. There's only so many guys in the history of the game that can say they've won at least 2 Finals MVPs. You know, if you're talking about contemporaries, the only current active players who have won 2 Finals MVPs, they're playing in the NBA still, are LeBron and Kawhi, outside of Durant. And it's just, it gets to a place where I'm really curious about this next move for him, because I really feel like I feel like we said this last time when he moved to Phoenix, but because I don't think anyone thought he was going to be traded again. But this really, really is like the last move. And where he goes, I think, can be pretty important at one point, and it could be a real change in how things go. So I have some teams that I think would make a lot of sense for both Phoenix and for Kevin Durant him as well. First team I think that makes the most sense and could probably do it, and I think it makes sense for both sides, would be Dallas. There was already talks, rumors that Dallas tried to get Kevin Durant at the deadline. That fell through. Listen, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, right? If you already trade away Luka Doncic, you doubled down on Kyrie. Obviously, you don't know when he'll be able to come back, and that's gonna be a scary thing to come back from a torn ACL. But we've seen athletes come back, and I wouldn't ever say that Kyrie's game was necessarily based purely off athleticism. So I think he'll be able to come back and be at least somewhat of a version of himself that he was before. You have Anthony Davis, who, while can give you offense, he had a great game the other day, can give you offense. He's still a guy that's, I would say, is more leanly as a defensive player, and that's something that you need. So ultimately, if you look at that, I feel like you can give up some guys to get someone like Kevin Durant on your team, and that team would make the most sense. I have long stood against big threes. I think big threes don't make a lot of sense. I think big threes now have just been a term that we want to use when we have 3 guys that we think that can make the All-Star team together. But this one I think actually makes a lot more sense. Obviously, Kevin and Kyrie are like this, right? Those guys played together in Brooklyn. When they were actually on the court, the team was actually really fucking good. And that team was awesome when those guys were on the court. And for Dallas, at the same time, it's like I just said before, you have the contracts and PJ Washington, excuse me. You can also trade Lively if you want. You can also trade Gafford if you want, because Phoenix needs centers, and Phoenix just needs guys that can kind of surround Devin Booker, just like role players in that sense, to kind of elevate their team. So that, to me, that trade stands out the most as a number 1 trade that I think Kevin would want, and I think that Dallas would make a lot of sense for them to get that kind of guy. The second team, I think, makes some sense. It's a little bit more complicated, obviously a little bit close to home. New York Knicks. Now, these 2 entities have been floating around each other for a long period of time. And it'd be so funny if Durant, who's rumored to go to New York, went to Brooklyn, left Brooklyn, went to Phoenix, and then somehow in a circumventional way got sent to New York, right? Because what is it? Life is a flat circle. This trade, I think, would, depending on what is given to Phoenix, would make sense for both sides. It all depends on what exactly Phoenix is wanting, right? Because if I'm Phoenix, I'm looking at this as like, all right, we need to take Kevin Durant's money and break it up into as many good players as we can get, right? Because I think that was the main problem with Phoenix is, again, this big three stuff. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. You still have Beal there. And these are all trades where Beal is still on the team because I can't figure that part out. But the trade that I think Phoenix would want would be some version of OG Anunoby is back in the deal, and you get some combination of Mikal Bridges, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart, Deuce McBride, like two of those guys, really one of those guys, and maybe Deuce is part of that deal because of the money. If I'm New York, the only trade that I'd be willing to make, and it would be so weird because he's having a fucking awesome season, is Cat. It's the only guy I would trade. It's the only guy I would flip. Their money is about the same. You basically just have to send a very small contract out from New York to make the money work. And if you are New York, you can convince Phoenix saying Cat and Booker are like this. They're like best friends. You need a center. Cat's a center. You're getting, if you want to argue, at this point in his career, the better point in this. I'm not someone who likes calling players assets because they're people and human beings and they are not things to be moved around. So anytime I talk about players in this sense, I really try to use like their talents or their services in terms of what you were trading for. You're not trading for like a fucking box car that you can just drive around. Like these are people with real stuff going on in their lives. With that being said, I would consider doing it because I think the value of what Cat can provide you and his age, his shooting ability, his health is vastly superior than what Kevin Durant is at the moment. The reason why, if you're New York, you do this trade is you have real concerns about whether or not you can have two awful defenders on the court at the same time come playoff time. And you ultimately just wonder if you just traded away a better, more efficient version of what you had in Julius Randle, right? Because the thing that makes the Knicks special, or can make the Knicks special, isn't playing Karl Towns at the 4 because he's very good at the 4. What makes him different and what changes your offense and changes and makes you an elite team is what he can do when he's your 5. And the fact that they've gone, 70 plus games, and I don't think that question was ever actually answered, means to me that I don't think they would hesitate in flipping him for someone like Durant. You bring in another center, whether it's someone on your team, whether you trade for someone else's center, and maybe that's the team that really kind of pushes and goes forward and wins the title. The third team that I think would make the most sense, because you always have to put them in there, are the Heat. Same kind of thing. I would do the issue with the Heat is the player that the Phoenix would want back, you would think would be Bam. Because, again, back to the whole center thing, I'm not going to go through it again. The player that I think that the Heat would want to trade is Tyler Hero. As much as, Pat Riley likes to serve you that nonsense of we would never trading Tyler Hero, they would flip that guy for Kevin Durant. The issue then is how good is that team, right? Is it kind of like, I kind of look at that team honestly like how the Milwaukee Bucks currently are when they trade for Dame. And there's nothing wrong with Dame. Dame's been great for the Bucks. That whole mixture never worked because of the surrounding pieces of it. So if you're trading someone like Hero and you probably have to trade a Duncan Robinson, the rest of your team is just so stripped of good players around those two guys that I think Durant's back in the same situation that he was in Phoenix. And here's kind of the thing with those three teams. Those are the three teams that I think he will go to if I'm picking one of the three. Which team is the most desperate? I think that Dallas is very desperate at the moment. New York, I don't think they're as desperate right now. That could change in 2 weeks. And I think Miami's very desperate. So you're dealing with three teams that are on some scale of want and need this guy. And I think it'll be kind of in part to what Durant wants and where does he want to go and who does he want to play for. And I think, unfortunately, as we've looked at his last two stops, this man is not very good at picking teams. So I really hope that this can end in a way kind of like the way it was with Steph Curry. Steph Curry was considered an all-time great prior to 2022. But it was always that feeling of, you needed Kevin Durant to come through. That first championship you won, LeBron's teams were really hurt. LeBron came back on you 3-1. And the fact that people felt that he never played well in finals games, which was a little bit overblown. He had bad finals games, but he did not play well in the finals. He had good games in the finals. But once he was able to win the 2022 championship when no one really kind of expected them to win the title, and get that finals MVP, I think that was what stamped him full stop as truly one of the greatest players in the NBA. And I feel the same way with Durant. I feel like he's in that same kind of bucket. We look at him as an all-time great, but he has all these weird baggish situations, and I don't want the conversation about Kevin Durant when his career to end. It's for us to talk about all the things that Kevin Durant didn't do instead of celebrating him as who he is. Like, people don't even talk about this guy as winning those championships. It's so odd. It's a guy that, and again, was clearly the best players on those teams. And yeah, I think for him, the biggest thing I would want for him is really to find happiness. And I think everything else will kind of fall into place. I don't know where that happiness can be. But yeah, that's kind of just my hope for him at some point as his career goes. Speaking of someone like Kevin Durant, trying to find happiness, we had a recent video drop. This is probably our first time diving away from a lot of sports conversation to talk about some rap beef. Because the interesting video we were talking about the Nokia video from Drizzy Drake Rogers. A guy who, I don't know who else had a bad year last year outside of Drake, like a really, really bad year. A man was walking around getting called a pedophile for like 6 months. But as most people are who are just fake and not really stand for anything, Drake dropped his video for Nokia. And I saw someone tweet this out. I apologize, I don't remember their name. I would love to give credit to them. But basically, they talked about, and I think this is something that artists should do more, especially big artists who, like, they have the budget, they have the time. A lot of times you see is that artists, they push what they think the single is, right? They think that, okay, this is the song that's going to be great. And this has happened well prior to any of this moment, right? Where you get a bunch of singles comes out and then the album comes out, right? And then what ends up happening is that maybe the fans like, oh, we love this one song. And then later down the line, the artist will then make a video for that song. What Drake did and P&D rather, for their album, Some Sexy Songs, they actually waited. There wasn't really a single release for any of this stuff. All the songs came out at the same time. And through sheer of algorithms and fan interest, Nokia's was the song for the album. And that's a very good point of you basically let your artists, you let your fans do the work for you and tell you what they feel like is the best song versus you telling them what you think that your best song is on this project. And the idea now is like Drake's back in. And I think the thing that's the funniest part of all this, and I think why this is a nice test case of human beings and maybe just music people, is the fact that people don't care about beef like this anymore. And it's kind of what I said way prior I don't know if I even said this on this platform, way prior to this happening and everything taking place, is that Drake will recover from this, from it all being so bad, mostly because is there aren't as many hip hop fans in rap music as they were back when I was growing up, right? The dynamics of the things have changed. We've always had rappers have beef. Unfortunately, we've had rappers killed over beef, but by and large part, it can dent your career in a way. You can clearly see someone like Meek Mill's career never reach the heights again that it once did after his battle with Drake. You can go back through history with guys like Little Flip and T.I., and then the list goes on and on and on about whose careers. Canvas is another good example with LL Cool J, where it's like the guys rising, or there's guys that are kind of coming up, there's a beef, and then there's like a shift in the market, and then it kind of resets and they never reach that height again. I think because of Drake's popularity and how good he is, and the fact that while anyone can say this or this or this about this man, the man knows how to make hit songs. And whether or not me or you like that, it's just a fact of reality. And I think with this new Nokia song, what it shows you is that as much as people love to crap on people and they love this punch down and really, go at someone when they don't like them, people like to dance. People like good music. And whoever is providing that music for them, they'll gravitate to, right? Do I really think that anyone actually thinks Drake's a pedophile? No, I don't actually believe that. Do I actually believe that there are people who fundamentally in their core believe Drake is somewhat corny? Yeah, you can believe that. But at the end of the day, we see the Spotify raps all the time, and who's always at the top or who's always in the mix, right? And this is coming from someone who's not even that big of a Drake fan, there are songs I like. I'm not going to sit up here and act like this man wasn't influential in my life, but you're not going to sit up here and try to tell me this man is buried. The suing shit, corny, very corny, and you can't be doing stuff like that. However, with most things is, can you make this beat hot? And at the end of the day, that has always been what drives music. Can you make hit records? If you can't make hit records, no one cares, right? If you can't make hit records, people will forgive and forget everything. I'm going to be completely honest. That's probably why Kanye West is in the space that he's at, right? Kanye West, I've never seen someone, and this is the time where I hate being in this kind of market, because the thing that Kanye wants is attention. He wants what I'm doing right now. And so I'm always conflicted in the sense of talking about him, because in a way I'm giving him the thing that he wants, which is attention and noise and people to be informed of who he is. Because unfortunately our electric or the people around us, the people that, kind of make up society, don't at the moment have the ability to distinguish what's bad and what's good. Now, all of a sudden, everything has to have a level of nuance versus just being bad, right? Kanye West has clearly become a version of himself that was not the person that I think a lot of people around my age knew when they were kids. He has morphed into some creature that is unrecognizable. However, I would say prior to all the stuff with the anti-Semitism that has come around, I don't really know what the KKK outfits are for now, but everything that came prior to that, Kanye was still doing a lot of crazy stuff. Having the whole thing with Taylor Swift. He rocked a Confederate flag at one point. The "you don't have the answer" sway, which is still one of my favorite meme drops. If you do not know what that is, please Google Kanye West sway interview. However, the biggest thing is that he don't make good music anymore. If he had hits, real hits, people would be like, oh yeah, but I still like it. It's like, oh yeah, but I still like it. People will talk themselves into anything if it's something that they enjoy. And the fact is that Kanye has not made good music in a long, long time. And the reason why he knows he hasn't made good music, hence why he's done all this other stuff. It's to get attention. It's to get people to watch and to listen and to stream and to do all these great things. And so the difference between these two men is, one, Drake has never done anything as heinous as what Kanye West has done. But second, and the main important part, is people care about hits. And if you keep providing people with that narcotic, they will keep coming back and keep enjoying and keep fucking with you, which is what has happened at the end of the day of all this. All right. That was all for you guys. Thank you guys again for listening to the Men Who Cry podcast. Again, I was going to talk about an announcement today that I mentioned last time. Like I said, we are starting an email thread for you guys. We'll be posting out questions in this email for you guys to answer for us. So one of the questions that we will be putting out, and I'll put this email at the bottom lower third. So whenever this pops up, you'll see, what our email is. It's themenwhocry@gmail.com. That is our email. And we want to hear some questions from you all. And one of the first questions that we want to ask, and we want to, at some point do this on the pod, is if there is a sports thing that you can change, what would be one main thing in sports, right? We are going to make you the sports czar, as Bill Simmons would once talk about. And I want to know what is the one thing that you would adjust, whether it's a rule change, whether it's a type of equipment used, whether it is length of games, whatever it can be, whatever you think about. We would love to hear your opinion, and we will read this on the podcast and give you guys an answer and let you guys know how we feel over here at the Men Who Cry podcast. So once again, thank you guys again. Please shoot us what you guys think, what you guys feel. And at some point later on this year, we'll be talking about it, answering your questions. All right. Thank you guys again for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.